what I want to talk about is transportation of compressed gases. Since I've been a DPE and I've started to fly with lots and lots and lots of different people, I've seen some really great ways that people are transporting their tanks, and I've seen some absolutely horrendously scary ways that people are storing their tanks. And a lot of people don't know that the transportation and the storage of those tanks is regulated by the Department of Transportation. So it's not just a safety issue, it's a legal issue also. I just want to talk about the two main things that we use as balloonists. So we use helium and propane tanks mainly. So the propane tanks are regulated by the DOT, as are the helium tanks. So for propane tanks, the DOT says that they must be stored and transported upright. Well, if they're in your basket, that's not an issue. Anybody remember balloon cocoons? They took the balloon and laid it on its side. What a bad idea. This is a summary of the DOT regulations. Compressed gas cylinders, I put in the bold. Compressed gas cylinders are hazardous items because if the cylinder or its valve sustains damage, the cylinder may explode or become a projectile. In addition, gases themselves may be either highly flammable, toxic, an oxidizer, or a combination of two or more hazards. Therefore, the Federal Department of Transportation, DOT, regulates the manner in which compressed gas cylinders may be transported upon public roads for the protection of the driver as well as the public at large. So the regulation is incredibly long. I just want to talk about transporting them because that's where I've seen some scary things. So the cylinders have to be restrained. I've seen people just throw their helium tanks in the back of their truck and let it roll around. Well, if the fitting on the top gets banged too hard, that will go right through the side of your truck and maybe through the side of your head and kill you. So there's a reason for this. They have to be restrained. So you can't just let them lay in your truck. They have to be strapped down some way, and hopefully where nobody can bump into them, because they're all supposed to have covers on the top of them so the valves can't get bumped. Nobody does that when they have a filler on them. Well, at the very least, make sure it's somewhere where nobody could bump it easily. Then it also says that they have to be restrained from movement, whether placed on the floor in racks or in boxes. I don't know if you've seen people carrying their party tank or their barbecue tanks around in those cartons, those plastic cartons that you can get at Walmart. That keeps them upright. However, a cylinder which has a safety pressure relief valve, that's a propane tank. They have safety pressure relief valves on the top of every one of them. They have to be stored and transported upright because the valve is not then submerged in the liquid contents of the cylinder. So that means the propane tanks have to be upright. So I don't know if for those of you who have gone to Ortega's to get your propane in the last 10 years or so, on the side of the wall they had a picture of a tank that shows you exactly what happens if you transport them on their side instead of upright. And it was a totally black hole with shrapnel everywhere and big chunks out of the side of the tank, because the pressure relief valve is supposed to release some of that helium if it gets too hot or has too much pressure. And if it's on its side, it's going to empty the whole tank. It's going to empty the liquid. I don't know if anybody's had their pressure relief valves go off, but I did once when I was still at War Balloon, and the cloud of propane was about half the size of this room. It was huge. I would have sworn that the entire tank was emptied, but when we went to refill it, it was 2 gallons. So you get a little vapor in your back of your van if you happen to be transporting that way. Best to have it in the back of a truck. That might not be an issue. You get a cloud of propane that big and it starts mixing with the air, you're going to be in big trouble. So the photo on the right, all that shows is the fire from just one of those little barbecue tanks. we're using minimum of 4 times that much fuel. Think of how big a fire would be if all 4 of your tanks went off because you were transporting them improperly. The person from this accident was badly burned because they were doing something with their barbecue tank when there was an issue and it exploded. Thank you. Any questions? Laydown tanks are still upright. So the tank is long this way, but the pressure relief valve is still on the top. All the gauges are on the top. That's still storing it upright from where not the length of the tank, but from where the pressure relief valve is. The pressure relief valve has to be on the top in order to work properly. Yeah, nitrogen would be the same thing. You're up next, Don. Oh, another question. Yeah, contrary to what it showed in the program, I am not the entire program. I'm the first 5 minutes. Yes, hydrogen's coming. I actually tried to do that, and they messed up my tanks, and I haven't got it done yet, and now I don't have time. But the main problem with that, for me, is that you can't fill them inside your trailer anymore. And my tank is strapped in there, man. It's not going anywhere. So I have to figure out a way to switch to hydrogen because you can't get helium anymore, where I can still fill it outside of the trailer and outside of the truck, which is the way I've got it set up right now, not easy. But you can, if you've got steel cylinders, they can convert to hydrogen. The only place you can get it is Tri-Gas, apparently, the only place in town. And they can even give you an adapter so that you can still use your filler that will fit the valve for the hydrogen tank. But we have to take a lot more precautions because hydrogen burns very, very easily. But I don't think we have a lot of other options. But that's another one that has to be stored upright. Okay, yeah, the BFA made some labels. Dave at Airco made some labels. So the National Transportation, what is it now? It's not transportation. National Fire Protection Association rewrote their manual, which originally we were supposed to be taking our tanks out of the balloon every time. Well, nobody here made us do that, but other places they have. I could sometimes, because I'm a wimpy female, get men to help me take them out, and they'd do it once, and then they wouldn't make me do it anymore. It was great. But most of the men would still have to take them out every single time. A lot of times at events you have to do that. It's extremely inconvenient and heavy. So the BFA worked with the National Fire Protection Association and now have guidelines that say that our tanks are regulated by the FAA and that they can be filled in the baskets, but in order for everyone to know that, you have to put the stickers on the side of your tank that says that. And they are still available from the BFA if anybody needs them. Here, nobody's been paying too much attention to them, but I know sometimes when you're traveling, it's become an issue. Okay, Don. There's Don. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Don's going to talk to us a little bit about the Quad A Safety Seminar coming up during Fiesta. Don.
Good evening. So they wanted me to just talk about the program for the safety seminar at Fiesta, of what we have planned. So we're going to start off talking about the upcoming medicals for commercial pilots. BFA just sent out a letter about that to BFA members. They're working on it. They expect Congress has mandated that something be done with medicals for commercial pilots. And the FAA is now getting serious about working on it. They expect it to come out in sometime of 2020. We're going to have a medical examiner who does the pilot exams for fixed wing currently, and she's going to talk to us about what's involved in that physical, how people can fail the physical or not get qualified, and hopefully the medications and things that you would have to worry about once you have that medical. So that's going to be the first part of it. Then we're going to go into another thing about accidents. The Education Committee is currently working on a new safety video, a new power line video, and in the course of that, Mike Voorhees did quite a bit of research of the NTSB database on accidents and looking for power line accidents and how they're being caused and what we could come up with some of the preventive measures. But as a side to that, we discovered that there is a large percent of accidents that in the description of the cause, it stated that the balloon landed safely, then ... Something happened. It was after the landing, and then something else happened to then cause the accident, whether it was a wind shift, passengers trying to get in or out, the basket rocked, it then got pushed into power lines, whatever. So we're going to have a discussion about that. We're going to start with David Bowling, Dr. David Bowling from the NTSB, just talking about what a reportable accident is, what it takes for a aviation accident to be reported to the NTSB and then get them involved. Then we're going to talk about that accident data with Mike and analyze some of those things, and maybe it's stuff that we haven't been thinking about properly up to now. And we're going to also have Rob Shantz, who's formerly with the Shantz Agency as a longtime insurance agent who has a vast database on accidents that were mostly not reportable to NTSB. They were more minor, didn't hit those criteria, but still resulted in a claim. He calls them taxiing accidents. So he's got a vast experience on those to kind of get us thinking more about the fact that the flight isn't over till it's over. It's not over till that fabric's on the ground and totally deflated and no chance of further movement. So we're gonna look at that pretty heavy. We're gonna have Mr. Ray Bear talk about the FAST team, the FAA's safety team. He's a member of that, and talk about their role and how that team works. And we're gonna have David Bear, his son, come in as the final presenter, talking about tie-offs, tethering, and other rope tricks, and maybe some stupid pilot rope tricks that we need to look at and have a little bit more respect for our ropes, the knots that we use, the systems that we use to tie off these big beasts. So that's the outline of our seminar coming up. We think it's going to be a good one. We've talked to both RPS and AIR insurance agencies. They both say they will give the full 8-hour discount for our 4-hour seminar. So that's a good thing if you want to get that done. And in addition to our seminars, there's the FAA mini seminars on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They're 1-hour seminars, so if you want to get your full 8 hours in, that's a good way of doing it. So I try to go to as many of those as I can. Unfortunately, the turnout is very low. It's embarrassingly low. So please think about going to those. Crew are invited, absolutely. So I think it's important for our crew to be involved in this. They are a big part of my safety when I'm flying, to make sure I'm not doing stupid pilot tricks. Another set of ears and eyes out there. So please get your crew involved, get them invited to these things. This is actually part of my education committee report, so I don't have to do that later. You can actually sign up for the seminar online. It is currently online. We have 35, you can sign up at the desk right over here at the side of the room. It's $35 for Quad A members, $45 for non-members, and $25 for crew members and other interested parties. So it's a good deal for a good safety seminar, so please come to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Just to keep the club informed as to what's going on, this is in relation to what Don was saying regarding the second-class medical. If you're a BFA member, you've already received the letter, and if you haven't, we want to keep the club informed. I'm a member of a subcommittee that's been working with the FAA ever since the Lockhart accident to try to keep second-class medicals or medicals, period, as to being part of the ballooning community. In our last teleconference with a representative from Washington, D.C., we were informed that they were going to go ahead and move forward with creating a new rule, in essence, that would remove the exemption which currently exists for hot air balloon pilots. And we were hoping that if they were going to implement a requirement for medical, that it may be third class or possibly even basic med, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So sometime between now probably and the end of the year, you'll see that that new rule is going to hit their website. And at that time, the comment period or the RPM will be active at that point, where you as a club or individually can offer your comments, your suggestions, your critique, your complaints, what have you, regarding that new rule. And that will be open for upwards of 12 months. So what that means then is if and when it does become a new FAR, then if you do have if you do have a commercial pilot certificate and you are exercising the privileges of said certificate, then you will be required to get a second-class medical. And I do believe that you've got an AME here in Albuquerque that is currently doing those second-class medicals exams. So I think you do have a resource here, but understand that you have two? You have two of them, great. You have more than some cities. So it's going to be an issue, of course, and only time will tell as to what the final language of the new rule is going to say. If you're familiar with the FAA Reauthorization Act that came out a few months ago, the language indicates how it will pertain primarily to commercial pilots. There was some fear at the beginning that this may actually include private pilots, so that doesn't seem to be the case. So it will definitely be for commercial pilots. So I'll continue to keep the club informed as to what the progress is on that. We are to the point now that our FAA contact won't talk to us anymore, which means that the rule is being written and it's about to be published. And so at that point, everything has to become part of the U.S. registry for records, and so therefore they really can't give us any more information. Dick. Good question. If you own a commercial certificate, as I do, and I don't do commercial rides, I don't fly, for example, I don't fly a commercial balloon, there's nothing that I'm doing that would say that it's a commercial activity, then based on what the FAA has told us, then you don't have to have a second-class medical. Now, we asked specifically about instruction. As it's currently exempted from having to have a medical for a commercial pilot who's doing instruction. But there seems to be some gray area there, because the only way that we balloonists can only way that we can instruct is to then exercise the privileges of our commercial certificate by doing so. So that's a question that we've already put to them for asking for some clarification as to how we may be able to determine if you are instructing as to whether or not you're going to need a second-class medical. Yes, in the back, Sue. If you are doing a flight review and you are, yeah, it would be the same as instructing. However, if someone paid you for that flight review, exactly. As long as you're not compensated, it would be the same as instruction. Yes, sir. Yes, good question. And that actually gets into another issue that we've dealt with this year as well. It's the new 8900 FSIMs. And we have been in writing from the FAA that if you are a private pilot and you go to a balloon rally and you're getting propane and you're getting hotel accommodations, that does not violate your private certificate. And that's an 8900. So it's separate from the second-class medical. But it's something that we've been dealing with the FAA this year as well. Yes. And sir, you're right, because the 8900 or FSIMs is guidelines. It's a document that FSDOs are supposed to use to help them with air shows, and it's a guideline. So you're right, you're going to run into some different interpretations regardless of where you are. Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you, Sam.